Hey everybody, welcome to the show. I am Hodey.
I am Traveling Lou.
I'm Brian.
I'm Desarae.
And this is Enemy of My Enemy. Well, we got a spicy one for you today. You may have noticed we have an extra voice in there. Desarae Lindsey. Holy crap. I got to guess and I can't say her name. Desarae Lindsey is running for Texas State Senate as a libertarian. And she's going to join us
Yes.
partly because
Oops.
she's awesome and other partly because she is from Texas. So she actually has some insight into what we're talking about today. It is about time for us to talk about this Texas state abortion ban. It is Senate Bill 8 or SB 8 for shorthand. We're talking about the abortion law here. I'm just going to go over a few of the highlights before everybody gets a chance to kind of give their thoughts on it here. So just real quickly, this is an abortion ban. People are talking about the 6-week marker a lot. The 6 weeks is actually not detailed in the bill itself. What it is a heartbeat, and that starts as early as 6 weeks, and so that's why you kind of hear that number floating around. There is a heartbeat detectable, an individual heartbeat that does form before the heart is fully formed on the child. Or embryo or fetus. See, there you go. I'm already revealing my point of view. No, on this one. But on the, there is a heartbeat that does develop before the heart is finished developing, but it is present. That does happen as early as 6 weeks. It would be 2 weeks, up to 2 weeks after you missed your first period, potentially, making it kind of hard to know if you're pregnant by that time, which is something the critics have picked up on. There is an exception in the case of medical emergencies. It does if the doctors have to go through a process and get a certificate to say this is a medical emergency, so I had to do this, but there is an exception there. The patients themselves, so this is a big one that I was wondering here, as I was like, what happens to people who ask for it? The enforcement is against the doctors themselves. It is so the patients can't be sued, but the doctors can. The bill does have certain provisions in it that makes it so that it does reach across county lines. The wording of it makes it sound like it can reach across Texas state border lines, although there is the wonder of how they would be able to stop you. There is some about enforcement in this law that I was reading through, and it's not too long, but while there was many pages that I could say like, oh, this is how they're going to enforce that, they actually didn't have a particular one for that if you travel outside of the county. Now, so I'm guessing that the outside of the county is a Texas county. Again, that could be interpreted as a state county, but they really wouldn't have a way of enforcing that one. So one of the more controversial parts of this is it does have a $10,000 award, a bounty. If you do report someone who is getting or has got an abortion, it's $10,000. Now, whoever does the reporting is actually listed as the plaintiff. Now, the state will take care of things from there, but anybody who does the reporting here is the plaintiff. And the way the wording works, the citizens are authorized to act as legal enforcement for this law. It will be $10,000. And as the plaintiff, there's obviously costs associated with that, but you would have the state will reimburse your legal fees if you do that. One of the while I was reading through this, one of kind of more of the humorous parts of this law on pages 5, 9, and 12, it all talks about how, and if the feds or other states can't sue us, even if they think we broke the law. And it's like that's not usually how laws work. Like it's like the Supreme Court can't do anything about it. You can't just say the Supreme Court can't do anything about it and have the Supreme Court not be able to do anything about it. But that is in several places in the law. It talks about how other states kind of can't challenge them, and the federal has no jurisdiction there. But they try to say it, and so I wonder if that actually will hold water. It'd be an interesting precedent going forward. Lawyers trying to challenge the law actually receive additional penalties under the law for trying to challenge the law. So it is not, they wouldn't be able to challenge it as a normal lawyer would, which is just, nope, I disagree with this law, we're going to challenge it in court. They actually put additional blocks for taxpayer-funded blocks to try and challenge the bill. And it does the same kind of for judges as well, that try to make a ruling against this if those judges, if those lawyers that we talked about earlier should bring it to court. The law is written in a way that makes it so that if one part, for whatever reason, is still defeated, even with those provisions in place, the rest of the law still stands. So you actually have to take it apart piece by piece. It can't be repealed wholesale. Of course, that would be with the exception of a Supreme Court or federal injunction. Because Desarae is our special guest, I'm going to let her speak first on this one. She's from Texas. She is the expert. So go ahead and give us your thoughts on the Texas abortion ban. Des.
So, I just want to say real quick though, watching Lou's face as you were going into detail, like that could so be a TikTok video.
Oh my God, I'm sorry, because so many of those details I hadn't had an opportunity to read. I've just been catching like sound bites here and there, so a lot of that is just mind blowing to me. But go ahead.
It is ridiculous, and I'm sure you all heard about, because it went viral. But there was a whistleblower website put on by, I forget the name of the organization right now, but by a pro-life organization, and people were just flooding it with all kinds of fake reports, and the website finally just crashed. It went down. And, and that's what's beautiful about things like TikTok or whatever. These kids mean business, It's great. I love it.
I was one of them.
Yay.
Yay. I think I might have just followed you on TikTok yesterday, actually. But yeah, I mean, how dystopian is this law? I mean, I have at least read, I haven't sat and read the entire bill. I've read big chunks of the highlights and so on. And of course had many discussions about it with my friends in Texas, other libertarians in Texas, people that aren't libertarians in Texas. And honestly, one thing I've noticed is that even my pro-life friends and family disagree with this law. They believe it is entirely dystopian and just an insane overreach, and it is. It's okay. Curry Taylor is the county chair of Dallas County Libertarian Party. One of the first people I met when I joined the party a decade ago, and anyway, he was always like. Just extremely passionate about this issue, and from the choice perspective, of course. And I remember reaching out to him after the bill passed and saying, I should have listened to you. I did not think that this would happen in my lifetime. I mean, I didn't pay that much attention to it. I have a lot of friends who are choice activists who aren't necessarily involved in a political party, but that's like kind of their passion project. And I'm like, well, what is it that they're doing? I know there are always like little like battles that need to be fought that, probably stay more behind closed doors that the public isn't necessarily made aware of. But this, I like watching Lou's face is how I felt. And I'll never forget, we were on a campaign call on Zoom, and we were talking about it, when right when it was signed. It hadn't taken effect yet, but I just started crying. It's like, I can't even believe this. Like, this is not a reality. And Hodey, I know you remember this, but towards the beginning of the pandemic, Vermin Supreme had released that video, Unprecedented Moment in Time. And I watched that the other day, and it was so upsetting because I was like, and this is, I'm kind of like jumbled right now and moving a little bit forward, but I feel like we could have done so much better, over the last 15, 16 months than we did. And watching that, I was like, oh, we were so full of hope. And now it's like, I can't go have an abortion if I need to, like, it's ridiculous. Reading Jacob's comment.
Oh yeah, don't worry too much about the comments. Those will.
Yeah.
Well, I
Don't worry too much about
I'm
Jacob.
curious as to his perspective, though. Very curious because I'm aware of his beliefs, and so it's an interesting thought and good perspective. But anyway, I'll stop rambling. I tend to do that.
No, you're just fine. As you should. People, generally silent politicians don't do too well. Although I wish there were
you
more.
just called me the P word. I thought we were friends, Hodey. God.
Oh no, Brian. Let's go ahead and get some male perspective here because that's what really matters.
Oh wait, no, you can't do that. It's
Go
an
ahead and give
abortion. No male perspectives allowed.
Oh, we're just gonna take a pass.
I didn't
on
even
this.
get to say anything yet.
Yeah, if it agrees
I've
with their
literally
opinion,
been
Brian,
waiting all
then
day to do this.
I didn't even get a chance to say anything. You guys don't even know my position. I was purposely keeping it quiet for this meeting, for our podcast.
Sorry, you were just a lucky
yeah.
victim.
Hey,
I was saving that one all day.
I know. Hang on here, and I just want to get this in. Ready? Are you ready? Ditto.
Oh, nice. There you go.
This is one of the most ridiculous laws. I have not had a lot of time to read through it, but I'm reading through some of the things here, and this is an interesting little piece here on this law. It is an affirmative defense. If you go out and accuse a doctor of performing an abortion, it is an affirmative defense for you if the doctor sues you. If a person sued under this subsection reasonably believed, after conducting a reasonable investigation, that the physician performing or inducing the abortion had complied or would have complied with this chapter. So basically, the way I'm reading that is basically, if you accuse a doctor of saying, I know he performed an abortion, and you did just a bit of research, anything like that, you can fight it in court and say, well, I did a reasonable search. And we know how well reasonable searches go in law. So this is, if I'm a doctor in Texas, I'm by Lone Star State. That's
right.
The liability right there is so enormous. And all they have to do is a reasonable investigation. Well, I went and asked. Oh, we're getting back now to anonymous informants. So it is ridiculous on every front. And the funny thing is this: the way they've written it, and even with all the other, well, if this is struck, then those law is still there for everything else. No, the Supreme Court's going to have a field day with this because they're going to write why every single point of this goes, number one, against Roe v. Wade, previous decisions on that. I don't care what the previous judges are so far. They've been pretty much constitutional going with precedent. But number two, the bitch slap that the legislation is going to get on this is going to be hilarious. I don't see it making it through district court. I see district courts putting a stop on it, and then enforcement's going to stop almost immediately. It'll be one of the few things that the Biden administration will get right, hopefully. Stopped clock type of thing. But it should be. I'm guessing that this will be in federal court very quickly, especially with the interstate pieces of it. That to me is, how can you write a law that prevents interstate? Yeah. Anyhow.
Yeah.
That's all I have on this one.
All right. Solid ditto. All right. Lou, let's have your puny female opinion on an abortion bill. Let's.
Jeez, you're on a roll, Hodey.
Yeah, I feel like if I don't have chauvinist, then I'm not like all the other pro-lifers out there. So I want.
There's that hater Hodey coming out again.
Hater Hodey
coming out hard. All right, go ahead, Lou.
So I've got, after hearing you kind of break down some of the pieces of this legislation that I hadn't really heard, I kind of had to backtrack a little bit because I had all my stuff prepared. I was gonna lay the smack down, and now I'm like, shit.
It's crazier than I thought.
It really is. So on the legislation itself, I mean, and the fact that they're it's almost like they might as well have written no takesies backsies when they were like, and nobody can overrule this ever. That's not how it works. I mean, I guess it is Texas, so maybe they'll be like, okay, fine, we want to secede from the United States. Like, I guess you could do that, but good luck. I don't know.
No takesy backsies is in page 17.
Oh, I knew it. See, I should be writing legislation. But like, that's just mind blowing to me. That I will say, I was a little. I mean, there's really nothing good in this, but I was a little bit relieved to hear that. Because some of the blown out of proportion nonsense you hear on social media is that they're gonna throw women in jail when they get an abortion, and they're gonna throw them in prison for years, and like just terrible things. And I think, and maybe correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounded like really the ones being prosecuted would be just the doctors. Like the women themselves would not be considered the, I don't know, suspect in this case.
Right, but the thing is that it sets up a civil penalty, which is far lower barrier, but a criminal move on this is a, oh, by the way, this is now criminal. So
Right.
I mean,
I agree.
yeah.
I mean, it's not. I mean, it's shit is still shit. But I was a little bit relieved to hear that it was not like we're throwing women in prison on, as soon as they walk out of a clinic, kind of thing.
No, slippery slope though. We know that. Others
right. So I think the thing that really frustrates me the most is that the amount of time and research that has gone into what it takes to limit the numbers of abortions that women seek. And there's a handful of things, and Hodey probably remembers this. This was a big part of our policy when we worked with Larry Sharp, and people wanted legislation one way or another on abortion, and we were like, or we get to the root cause of it. And we're talking about everything from economics to education to the criminal justice system. And that is, there's so many facets to each of those facets. If you're looking at the criminal justice system, victims of rape, a lot of times they don't want to report a rape because our criminal justice system is so jacked up that all they do is re-traumatize rape victims and very rarely ever get a conviction or any sort of justice for these victims. So if it's not reported as a rape, but you were raped, so you want an abortion, and then you can be, prosecuted on some level for that or what have you, or just abortions are banned across the board, like now you're in trouble. So there's so many different things that we have to fix to actually get to a point where we are lowering the numbers of abortions that women are seeking, because we're giving them a better foundation to start from. We're giving them better opportunities. We're getting them out of environments where they're being abused by a father or stepfather, or left alone, or in low income or low education communities, like all of these things that contribute to it, And I will say, I had a joke lined up for this, and I was going to be like, well, the top 5 reasons that women seek abortion are none of your business, none of your business, none of your business. And that's still very true, but I totally got ahead of myself and way too serious. It was going to be.
How dare you take abortion seriously? But yeah.
Right. I mean, obviously, like, and in true like bad lefty fashion, one of the things that I really wanted to say on this topic was, I really have such a hard time dealing with like that small but loud portion of the left that praises in such grotesque and insensitive fashion having an abortion. The whole shout your abortion and celebrate your abortion. The number of women who are traumatized because they've had to have an abortion, whether it was for health reasons, or, you know, I really want to finish my education and get out of this life that I've lived, and I don't feel that I can do that because I don't have the support to do both, and I have to make a really hard decision. Like, I don't personally know a single woman who's had an abortion and been like, woo, that was awesome. Like, that's, even if it's the right thing for you at the time and the best decision you can make, it's still not easy. It's still very traumatizing. And when we have that small fringe group on the left that's being exceptionally loud, and I get that their idea is that they're trying to normalize it.
Right.
They are not
an Overton window kind of thing too. But yeah.
Right. I'm like, would you shut up? Like, there's so many women, like, abortion in and of itself is often a traumatizing thing. And when you treat it as something to celebrate, you're not looking at the issues.
Well, and the circumstances surrounding, you know, making it necessary to have to speak that out as an option. Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly. So I think, you know, this is a cheap shot. It is probably one of the most misogynistic bills. And it's also medically just irresponsible because, you know, talking about so many women don't know they're pregnant until long after, you know, there would be a recognizable heartbeat. And especially in cases of rape where people oftentimes don't report or disclose for months after, you know, so they're, even though they're saying they're not going to criminally prosecute women at this point, they're, you know, they are certainly persecuting women. And I would really like to see just a mass exodus of PhDs from the state of Texas to go work in Louisiana, Oklahoma, New Mexico. Like, oh, that'd be great. And I'd really like to see how they think they're gonna, you know, have any kind of repercussions against anybody outside of their state lines.
Well, the one thing about this bill, which is so short-sighted, is that number one, obviously it's going to have constitutional issues, but number two, I mean, if you wanted to turn Texas purple, there's a great way to do it. And so this for the Republican Party, this is, and I understand voters have a very short attention span, and you know, they'll go ahead and say, oh, well, you know, it was ruled unconstitutional, no harm, no foul. Yeah, but there is going to be harm and foul, especially when we're running in mostly, let's say, 45, you know, maybe 5, we get lucky. In some districts, hopefully a lot more for you, Desarae. But it's tough to sit there and see that and go, this makes no sense, even from a political aspect. You could have written a very much watered down bill that probably could have got a lot of people on board by saying, look, third trimester, you know, maybe we have to go through that certificate process or whatever. But, and that's the thing, is that, oh, Lord, Dennis and I are agreeing. Dear God, help us. No, it's one of those things that's just going to drive people to look at Republicans just as silly as they are, and unfortunately, Democrats are being quiet at this point. So,
not really.
Oh, they aren't. I'm sorry. Yeah, you're on the ground.
Not in Texas. No, I just to throw this out there real quick. There's a nonprofit organization called Women's March that actually formed after Trump was elected, and I've just joined their organization. And of course, they're mostly Democrats. There's a smattering of some third party women in there that I've encountered so far. But
I think most of us are familiar with the Women's March, right? I mean, that was
I would imagine, it's an amazing organization, and we just had the first planning call. We're doing nationwide marches on October 2nd, ahead of the Supreme Court reconvening on October 4th. So even though I live in Toole, Texas, and I'm running in Senate District 3, I'm still going to be helping to organize and attending the Austin March because it's the belly of the beast, you know. So The Austin and DC marches are pretty much like the flagship marches, but I looked at the map earlier and I almost started crying. There were marches popping up everywhere. I mean, I saw 3 just in like some of the most rural states. I can't even remember which one, but like just several of them. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I mean, we're pissed. We're not going to take this lying down.
Yeah, send me a link to that because I want to see if
I will. Yeah. I have it linked on my website too.
If you actually want to send the link in the chat, I'll put it on the screen so everybody can see it.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So now that you've all had your fun, I'm going to jump in here. Now, whenever there's a short law, that is always a sign to me that I'm like, because every law there's a lot of ground to cover. I mean, you look at a medical, bill or ballot or something, and most of these laws take a long time to read. They're a pain in the butt. In this case, it was a very short law. It's very easy to read for yourself. And that usually indicates to me that somebody wrote it in crayon originally before converting it to the normal format. And so whenever there's something like this, even though nothing like, of course, sounds super childish, there's already, like we've talked about on the show already, there's several like holes that you can poke in it. This is the reason why you have like a healthcare bill that had all kinds of problems, corruption, money going to fake districts and stuff like that. I mean, it was bad, but this is why it was as long as it was, because it's like, hey, if you're going to try to challenge that, here's this. And so because it's so short, the glaring holes in it become all the bigger, because we can say, oh my gosh, this was easy for me to read. How easy is it for me to read for other people? Okay, so I was in a hospital, and I'm going to sound pro-life before I go pro-choice, because I am technically pro-choice. I'm going to Tarantino you a little bit, though, and I'm going to give you the pro-life kind of part first.
It's okay, we're used to you, Hodey.
Yes. Right, this darn center guy. So we were I was in a hospital that did perform one of those. I mean, they even talked about on the shows, hey, we perform hundreds of them a day. It's really not a big deal. Like you'll kind of see some of these things. And I gotta say, yes, we performed hundreds of them a day, and yes, they were all a big deal. Like, we say it's not a big deal, but it is. And they are, Lou, I'm glad you mentioned, they're traumatic events and they are traumatic events for the patient, the mother involved. They are traumatic also for the medical crew. We had a psych ward that was like right next door to the abortion, and that was just coincidental. It wasn't like we just sent them from getting the abortion to the psych ward. But I mean, more often than not only would the patient end up there, well, I guess I can't say more often than not, but the medical crew would be there as well. I'm talking to psychologists and therapists and whatnot like that. It is an experience that, and I gotta say, people who kind of go flippantly pro-choice kind of, and I'm not saying you have to necessarily see an abortion performed or have it. You don't need to witness one to kind of understand. But for those who have been there, throwing up is not uncommon. For the doctors, nurses, us, it's a tough thing to go through, even when it's like the needle. And like even when it's super early, I mean, we're talking. So there's different ways that the abortion's performed depending on how long the embryos come along. There's not just like a single like abortion way. I mean, there are times when even at 6 weeks where we can say, hey, take this pill. It's not lodged in yet. You'll be fine. Most of the time when it's that early on, when you're talking first, maybe not entirely through the first trimester, but for the first couple of months, it's one of those that we have an injection, and again, I haven't been part of this process for 15 to 20 years. So please don't the medical stuff updates all the time. But this is back when I was doing it. We'd have a needle that would inject the embryo with a lethal fluid that wouldn't always work, right? And so like you pull it out and you still got. And you can say human, not whatever, but it's still moving and it still has a heartbeat. And that is a really tough thing to go through to see. And you're like, well, do I squish it and put it out of its misery? Do I crush it? I mean, at what point do we treat it as a human? We're not supposed to treat it as a human ever. And this is why you got all those videos that came forward of like people, babies, embryos, whatever you want to call them, fetuses crying in like a trash can, like in the side, while they're just waiting for it to shut up and die, because there's no real protocol here. We're supposed to treat it like medical waste, and or medical, depending on the state you live in. There were times where you treat it as a medical product because you could, resell it or move it, or you're not supposed to resell it for profit, but there's some videos that poke some holes in how that gets done as well. And it's tough. And I gotta say, so like then you've got the midterm and even late first trimester abortions, where what you do is when it's far enough along, you try to clip the spine, right? Like at the neck, and try to behead it while it's still in the womb. And that is I gotta say, when the doctor's like putting pressure on it and you hear like crunching, it is a tough thing to hear. And I will just, from a personal standpoint, it is difficult to go through. It is difficult to watch. It is tough for me to just outright say this was never a human being when it's crying, when it's, and we are, I mean, I got to say, the people who say like this is the majority of abortions when they come out crying, I know I've used those examples. We performed hundreds a day. They are accurate 99% of the time, right? Like nothing goes wrong most of the time. And it comes out, it's dead, there's no squirming, whatever. But when you perform hundreds a day and you get 1% that happen to be crying, breathing, whatever you want to say, moving, wiggling, writhing, it is a tough, I got to say, it messed me up real bad. It certainly tainted my view on the issue. And it's a tough thing for me to see. I don't want women or anybody to make that choice, to go through that, right? Now, here's where I turn pro-choice. As is with everything else in this life, is my better option to use government force, or is it to use culture? And culture is an absolutely superior option. I gotta say, there were the people that were crying outside, you suck, you whatever, they made no difference in people's minds. What made a difference in people's minds? We had certain groups that would come in and say like, hey, if you decide to go through it, we'll pay for these medical procedures. We'll guide you through the process. We'll help. We'll cover adoption costs.
Right.
We want to come in and help you. They were a lot of times religious. They were a lot of disorganized groups, and they were the most successful in this. Now, even more successful than them, I rarely saw this procedure performed when the mother or when the patient had anybody else involved. I mean, a mom, a dad, a brother, a boyfriend, husband. This was almost exclusively, I mean, I'm talking 999 times out of 1,000, almost exclusively performed by a woman who is alone and feels she has no other options and nowhere to turn. And so when you create a culture that commands silence and secrecy like this law does, then you're actually perhaps contributing to this pro-choice problem, if you want to call it, of women choosing to get these abortions, because they're scared to tell you that they got pregnant. They're scared to tell you that I can't let my boyfriend know, he'll be mad. I can't let my husband know, he'll be upset. I can't let, and so they shut up about it. They try to get this done and experience. They try to, if the goal is to have less abortions, your more effective strategy is to encourage them, be with them, love them, be there for them, give them a home, stop being judgmental, and be there and encourage and show them that there will be a place after this procedure is done or the procedure is not done, that they won't be judged, that they will be loved, and that they and their child will be taken care of. And so for me, that is by far the superior technique, just because I saw it work, right? Like even among people that, and it's so hard as a third party, to say like, hey, this is our organization, sign these papers, but it was much easier for a family member to come in and say like, we've got this. Now, as always, there's exceptions. Of course, it's a different feeling when we perform it and the mother's life is in danger. It just is, right? Like, and it's a different feeling when it's rape, incest, those kinds of reasons. There's a sense of relief. Like those aren't the ones that, even if it kind of goes badly, that there's throwing up, you know, difficulty coping from the medical staff. Like, we are just like, okay, let's, like, this is going to be okay. I see that there's a lot of comments. So I'm gonna let this go back to you all to discuss, because we've got a ton of comments a bit based on what I said here.
Oh, wow.
But yeah, like, I just think that it's important to understand, like Lou even mentioned, it's not a celebratory thing. It's really tough. It does make me sad. I even have a tough time with kind of like and I mean, just from a personal, honest opinion, I even have a tough time with like the little one that's like a week old. Like, just seeing it like in the bag still didn't feel good for me. So like, I understand that that's personal, and obviously I'm biased on the issue just because of what I've seen. I didn't see normal things, right? What most people tend to deal with.
Right.
So, but yeah, go ahead, discuss a little bit, open forum, whatever you want to say.
Can I mansplain abortion for the next few minutes?
Yeah, hit me.
Oh, dear God.
No, I'm going to let the ladies go in this one because there's nothing else I can say on that.
I want to say, Hodey, you know, what you said, you know, it did affect me. I used to be staunchly pro-life, like militantly, and I wasn't religious. It, you know, so it had nothing to do with that. It was my best friend growing up, her mother was a pro-life activist, and that kind of had an effect on me. You know, I had to watch all those videos and all that stuff, and when I had my son when I was 18. I never had considered abortion for an option. My mom and I had talked about adoption, and as soon as I found out for sure I was pregnant, the thought of it, I couldn't, like, I wanted to keep him, and I'm so glad I did. But his life might have been better had I oh, thanks, Wyatt. Had I, you know, given him up for adoption. But you know what? He's a happy, well-adjusted adult, and he and I are like super tight. Anyway, I'm digressing here. So I was about 19, or I think I was 19, and I was at the hot tub of these apartments that I lived in, and there was a girl there that was friends with one of my friends, and she would not get in the hot tub. And I was like, well, hey, how come you're not sitting in here with us? And she's like, well, I have to go have a procedure done tomorrow. And, oh, what kind of procedure? Not picking up on, you know, that is kind of usually the word that they use. And I went off on her when she explained to me I was like, how could you do that? That's such a terrible thing. And I mean, I was an asshole, a total asshole. She started bawling. And she's like, I was raped. I have to do this. I can't live with this. Like, the trauma is just too much for me to bear. And she was like, I believe a year younger than me. So 18. I mean, she was a very young woman. And when she started crying, that's immediately, I knew I was wrong on that issue entirely. How dare I judge her? How dare I say anything to her? What kind of nerve did that take for me to do that? And the fact is, you know, I'm absolutely grateful that she had a way to heal from that's one step of the process of healing from the trauma that surrounded that. And you know, like Lou said, and Hodey reiterated that, you know, it is a traumatic experience. I've had 2 abortions. I'm not thrilled that I had them, but it was the best choice for me, best choice for my family, best choice for the son I already had. You know, and I'm grateful that I had the freedom and ability to just go to a clinic and get it done. And yeah, I was sad. I came home and I cried. It wasn't easy, but it was the best thing to do. And fortunately, that probably saved 2 lives from being completely fucking miserable, at the minimum, you know, not to mention my own son, you know, mine, and everybody involved. And it's a tough thing, and we all have personal convictions about it, but at the end of the day, it's not on us to tell anyone anything. And I was a real piece of shit that I did that to someone else, and it took that he and I actually wound up being really, really, really good friends after that. And she appreciated that I knew I was wrong and came around on it and so on. But what a terrible thing that I did. Awful.
Yeah.
Well, I mean,
understand.
but how much does the guilt change anything? You know, at this point,
Yeah.
all we can do is learn, talk, share experiences, and grow. You know. I do want to address somebody real quick here. Diana, I know you're saying that I'm spewing misinfo. Again, this is my experience, and it was from a long time ago. I did specify that going into it. You're saying saline abortions aren't done anymore. That's cool. I said that I haven't been keeping up with it, so I'm not trying to spew misinfo here. This is what we performed. I believe they still do the beheading, right, or like at least the severing, right, just to like make sure. But that's something. If there's a totally different process, please enlighten me. I'm not trying to spread misinformation. This is simply my experience with it, and if they've upgraded the process, then that is great. Sorry, go ahead.
But one thing I did want to bring up about the adoption piece and the abortion piece, my wife and I adopted 4 kids out of foster care, and we did foster care for years. Yeah, I mean, there's really how do I say this? There are some people who just don't care. They don't have, they understand the long-term consequences. They've already lost children and they keep losing them. So, and this gets into the whole libertarian debates we've had before about separating children from parents when they can't take care of them. And this is just one of those items that just keeps coming up. And unfortunately, until society figures it out, we're going to have to keep doing what we're doing. And I don't see a better way. I don't see how forcing women who want to have abortion, because I can tell you this much, I don't see a lot of people volunteering to go into foster care. I don't see a lot of people volunteering to take these kids. And I mean, it's a big kind of crapshoot, especially if you don't know if somebody's been substance abusing and things like that. You don't know if the child's going to come out with significant problems, and so that keeps those people away. So,
yeah. Sorry, I got disconnected there for a minute, and I might have missed a couple things, but I wanted to chime in to kind of follow up on some of the things that Lindsay was saying. When every day when we drive to work, we pass a women's clinic, and probably 4 out of 5 days there is a group protesting in front of the clinic, and women have to literally walk through them to get into the clinic.
Yep.
And it's heartbreaking to see. And my husband and I were talking about this at one point, you know, a few months back. I think, you know, one of the first times that I had seen protesters out there, and I was like, oh my goodness, you know, and it's hateful stuff. And they have little kids out there holding signs that are hateful to these poor women or girls in a lot of cases. And my husband told me a story about when he was younger and living in Chicago. He worked as a bouncer at like some clubs and stuff like that. And one of the girls that was a dancer at the club came to him and said, I need to go to the clinic, but I'm scared. Would you come with me? And he's like, yeah, like, absolutely. And so he walked her in and, you know, put his big hoodie on her over her head, so over her face so nobody could see her. Aww. He walked her in, and he was so, like, humbled just by the experience of, you know, seeing kind of what it was like for her to have to walk through a picket line and go through this, just in that experience. So for the next, I don't know, however many years he lived there, he continued to go and do that by himself on a voluntary basis, and just acted kind of as a bodyguard. And talked to them in the waiting room and sat there and held their hands and got them through the picket lines, and that's why I married him. But I just had to tell that story because it was really sweet.
That is sweet. That's beautiful.
That's fabulous.
I went to just to kind of add something on top of what you just said. I went to a women's clinic in Dallas when I still lived in Dallas. Every time I needed a checkup to get my birth control, and they were open on Saturdays, and so that's why I went. And I go there, and I'm thinking, oh, I'm just going for a checkup, no big deal. Like, I don't have to worry about it. They still cornered me, and I wasn't young. I was like, late 20s, early 30s. I wasn't a child, like, a scared 12-year-old who was raped by her uncle or something just horrifying like that. That they used to, they use those facts to intimidate them. They're just horrible, vile people. But anyway, they, so they corner me, and I'm like, I'm just here for a checkup. Can you just leave me alone? And you're getting on birth control? Yeah, I'm on birth control. Well, that's irresponsible. That means your husband is holding out on you if he's like, what? You people are batshit. And I was just like, you know what? I'm good. I'm just trying to prevent myself from having to be here for something else. And went in and did my thing. But I didn't even think to ask my husband to go with me or anything, because I was just there to get a checkup and get my prescription for birth control. They're crazy. Withholding for me. What?
Yeah. It's just, and the fact that the women making these difficult decisions, I think one of the tough parts about this is, we talk about Roe v. Wade, and I understand that Roe v. Wade was done as a privacy bill. It's like, hey, we're not saying whether it's a person or not. We're just saying you have to invade a great deal of privacy to enforce any kind of law against abortion, and you totally do, right? There's a ton of invasion of privacy, and so it's weird to me because I feel like Roe v. Wade would apply to almost all of this bill, just because citizens conducting an investigation, that is so invasive of privacy. I understand, law enforcement or citizens or whoever you have doing it, it's going to be very invasive. One of the big issues that I've had with the pro-life advocates is it's like, well, how much harm is it okay to do today? If we can't have an abortion, then can you drink, smoke? I mean, if we're going to talk about if it's another person, if you're going to treat this as another entity, then suddenly you can't have any harm come to the other person. So do we lay every pregnant person up in feather beds and, peel grapes, but then also lock the door to make sure they can't get outside? There's so much, it opens the door to how much harm can happen. And these are just difficult, This is HIPAA hell. Yeah, right.
It really is. I can just see somebody breaking HIPAA to try to get, and I'm kind of going through it, and I'll dig some more through the law here, but it's going to go counterintuitive, because if you get that $10,000 reward for breaking HIPAA and says that, oh, you can't be prosecuted, watch the feds go, oh, yes, you can, very quickly. So it's, as I said, this thing fails so badly. And I'm guessing a district court's going to go through it and be like, you got so many pieces in here that either break Roe v. Wade, that break other. They might try to get a friendly district judge that might say, oh, okay, we'll listen to it. But it's going to have delayed implementation. It's never going to. I don't see it seeing the light of day.
Let's hope it doesn't.
Yeah, it's a bill. It's effective well enough right now. I just one might think that the Supreme Court is going to step in and be like, okay, that's enough. How much do they like being told in the law, by the way, you guys can't do anything about it? I don't think that that's going to be something that they like.
Well, the Supreme Court, the reason is that they take a look at prima facie to see if it was unconstitutional. and they kind of went right along lines and saying, no, we're not saying it's unconstitutional, but we're not saying it's stupidly right now. So they probably want to hear some of these defenses because it might just leave something open. But it's really again, we're circling this, and we'll see what happens. I'm sure the Texas District Court's going to probably chew on it. The feds are going to chew on it for a little bit, and that'll be it.
I wanted to comment also, and I'd almost forgotten about this part. There was some statement the governor made.
Oh, dear God!
Questioned by a reporter, something to the effect of like, "Well, we're just going to end, rape and all, whatever."
Yeah.
Something to that effect.
We're just going to get rid of rape.
Oh, no shit! Why didn't we think of that hundreds of years ago? Like,
I forgot about that. Yeah.
Yeah, he's come under a lot of fire for that, and rightfully so. Like, holy shit. How about you test all those rape kits that are sitting there before you say you're gonna just get rid of rape?
Right. Yeah, so I'm getting some chats, and apparently a lot of what I experienced was done around 2007, and the majority, and I did know this, the majority is done via, as I have posted on the screen here, dilation and and
aspiration,
some kind of suction. Yeah, so my job, just so people know, I am not a doctor. I want to specify this. My job was to run vitals and make sure that heartbeat's going, blood pressure is still there, which is actually a pretty big deal, especially when somebody's under some anesthesia. Now, to say that I was an active, smart person and knew exactly what was going on here, it's okay. There we go. Yeah, there's the forceps there that I'm talking about. Okay, I think Diane and I are finally on the same page here. There's and some of these processes, apparently what I saw was and it was only 1%, very small, limited, the bad stuff that I'm talking about was around 1%. Brian mentioned here in the private chat, it did stop. We've gotten even better since 2007. This was me fresh out of high school. I think I took 1 year of college. So that would have been 2004. I did the EMT thing, 2005. So yeah, this would have been just before 2007. I don't, there's a lot of complexities to it. So please don't, what I'm saying is please don't take anything I said to be this is what all medicine is about. I am not a doctor. An EMT is not a doctor. I am a great taxi driver that is able to keep you alive for a little bit until I get you into the hands of somebody else. So if anything I said sounded ignorant, I apologize. I honestly, all I know is what I saw. And, I wasn't in tune with what was, super going on around me.
Hodey, your description, though, let me just say, it is heartbreaking, but the thing is that it's reality, and it's part of every medical procedure. There's things like that we expect our medical, people that are performing procedures to be heartless, just it's very tough. So we need to take a look at this and understand it. But in the end, people have to do these things, and we're better off
do it anyway. So
we might as
well ensure that they can do it safely. Sorry,
it's just like with drugs and everything else. Oh, we don't want you doing it because it could be dangerous. You don't know who's doing it. Well, you make it illegal, and there's still a market for it. Guess what's going to happen? So it's just this. We're going to see this, I think, be gone very quickly.
Yeah. Is there anybody else? Anybody want to squeeze anything in here? We got a few minutes before we're going to flip over to the Piece of My Mind segment, and I want anybody to get out anything that they feel is we still haven't addressed for this bill. Anybody with any last thoughts?
I just want every one of these legislatures that passed the bill, I'm looking forward to them signing up and becoming foster parents. I mean, if Tony Dungy could do it as an NFL coach, all of them can do it.
Yes.
So please sign up. Let's see you put the put your money where your mouth is.
Absolutely. I wanted to wrap it up with a coming from more of a religious aspect. Looked into it, and as far as I can tell, there are no specific scriptures that are anti-abortion. In fact, there are a couple of scriptures that, in certain contexts, support it. And then there's also the fact that, God sacrificed his adult son, so obviously he's very pro late term abortion. So I'm kidding. That was in very poor taste, but I had to say it.
I know. I if you didn't do it, I
It
would.
was, but yeah.
I would be. Yeah. It gets down also the one thing that I wanted to talk about. Get this last thing that comes from a libertarian perspective. A woman is raped. It's a violation of the NAP. She goes to the doctor and someone wants to intervene with that. That's a violation of the NAP. She has an abortion. People view that as a violation of the NAP. This is like NAP inception. It just keeps stacking and stacking. And at some point, you got to say, look, you know what? This person's already been through enough trauma. It's going to be a violation of the NAP to force a person that doesn't want to carry a child to term to be able to go ahead and carry that child to term and raise them. So, at some point, we got to start saying, we've got to understand people have rights. Women have autonomy over their bodies. That's just how life is. I do take Dave Chappelle's little bit about it funny. You should be able to get an abortion, but the guy should also be able to abandon the, bleep, bleep, bleep. So, yeah, anyhow. And yes, I agreed. Wyatt.
One of the things that bugged me at the end of Infinity War was that Thanos got to do his terrible thing and then not be a part of, like, if he thought he was doing the right thing, okay, fine, but then he didn't want to be a part of the solution. And like Brian, you talked about, like, I look forward to them signing up to being foster parents. It's like, you don't, like, it is very unethical and very hypocritical for you to snap your fingers and do this and then not be a part of their lives once they're born, right? Why is it your caring stops? And this is the issue that people have so often. And I mean, we've all heard the argument, but just to reiterate, it's like, you cared so much before they were born, but now that they're born, it's like, I don't care if they're educated. I don't care about it to give them medicine. I don't care to give them whatever. Mm-hmm. And it's like, and I understand from like especially as a libertarian perspective, maybe not wanting to pay for it. Like, we should not be funding abortions, adoptions, from anything. Should we be funding whatever with taxpayer money? Insert, whatever the anything is, probably not, right? Taxation is theft, and I don't like theft. But at the same time, it's like, if you want to if you care so much about bringing this person to fruition, you need to care about them after they've come to fruition. And so you need to be a part of the parenting process if you demand that this person go through pregnancy and become a parent. So like, anyway, that's just one of those, you look like Thanos, you evil people that want to snap your fingers and then don't want to do anything after the child is born. I'm not saying all pro-lifers, but the pro-lifers that care about these lives in the embryo and then stop caring after they're born, you come off as hypocritical for a darn good reason. We are going to take a brief break, and we'll be right back with the Piece of My Mind segment, so please don't go anywhere. It's about to get fun. All right, everybody, thank you so much for holding on there. We are going to give you a piece of our minds here. There's 4 of us, so we'll try to keep it a little bit on the brief side because there's just so much to discuss. For my piece of my mind, I just wanted to talk about walking away from situations that aren't productive. Especially on social media, people feel that they can say anything because they have the anonymity of the internet, or even if they put their face out there like we have up here. It's a lot easier to be mean to Desarae when she's in Texas and I'm in Utah than we are face to face. And there's a good reason. I mean, libertarians are always shocked where they're like, wow, we had this convention and everybody got along. Isn't that weird? We're usually always fighting. Yeah. Because you can't smack each other in the jaw, like when you're far away. When you say something that deserves to get smacked in the jaw, it is not a weakness. If you just kind of say like, "Hey, this isn't productive. This isn't going anywhere. You're getting mad. I'm getting mad. Nobody's learning anything. No, we're both very defensive right now. I'm just going to be done with it." Using the block button is really helpful. And it's just a feature that's there to just say, like, you and I just don't have positive interactions. I'm sorry, and that's going to be the way it is. So back in my religious days, and I guess I'm still religious, back in my church-going days, I guess I'll say, I worked very hand-in-hand with the missionaries when they'd have somebody who was particularly difficult, because I love to discuss and debate and listen and kind of talk about when people have difficulties grasping the faith, or and understandably there are tenets that people don't want to we don't like to explain. It's the underbelly of the church that nobody wants to look at. And so when, of course, naturally, when people don't want to be part of your religion, they're looking at that underbelly and they're saying, well, you don't want to address it. And that's all I see right now. Like, it's this gross, you lift up the rock and there's a bunch of spiders under it. And you're like, no, the rock is pretty. The rock is good. And they're like, well, I know what's under there. Like, it's ugly, And so I would kind of work with them to help explain these things to people, kind of make sense of it all. But whenever you're not nobody can be a missionary for everybody. There's somebody who's better explaining things than others. I've read so many economics books that whenever there's an economics discussion, I find that I'm usually able to relate to capitalist, socialist, mutualist, whatever your ism is, Chicago style, Austrian style, and just kind of say, like, hey, let's work this out and we can have a productive conversation. Now, I don't expect everybody to be on that level economically, because it only happened to me because I was in a hardcore nerd part of my life where I was just like, I must read all these books because they're fun and I'm loving them and everything. Now, if you're not that kind of person, that's great. You're probably an expert on something else. I mean, even me describing abortion right now, I'm obviously not the expert on it. And so if somebody's like a doctor and coming at it from a medical, standpoint, I'm going to have to take a step back. I don't understand it well enough. I don't know if many of us have done the work in understanding exactly what global warming is, or climate change, or whatever you call it is, why it happens, how the atmosphere works. We can watch some videos and we can learn from those people. But as far as us being the go-to experts on it, most of us are not that. And it's okay to just say, like, hey, you know what? I'm not an expert on this. Here's who I recommend that you talk to. You develop those connections if you can. So when we're having these arguments on Facebook and we're just not reaching each other, it's not giving up on the person to just pull the plug. It's just saying, you know what? I'm hoping someone else can reach you on this because I'm just not doing a good job of it. And you can take that personal accountability and just say, I'm not there. I don't believe that. I don't give up on almost anybody, because I don't think I've seen people change. I mean, I've seen some people become libertarians where you're just shocked, right? Where you just say, like, oh my gosh, I thought you were about as pro-state, pro-Republican as it got, and now here you are, waving a rainbow Gadsden flag, and wow, like, what happened? Like, all of a sudden you become this great libertarian, and somebody just hit him in a way that you couldn't before, and that's okay to just say, like, you know what, there's somebody for everybody. And I'm not going to rehash the specifics, but I became something of a figure on social media for blocking another individual in the movement. And the thing is I don't hate that individual. I don't dislike them. We just don't get along, and it's okay to just be like, you know what, we don't get along, and nothing productive comes of it. And you have your audience, I have my audience. I don't want to even stoke the fires, the flames. I don't want my people flaming his people. I don't want his people flaming me. Frankly, until I was called out for this block a couple days ago, it'd been really peaceful. It was fantastic, right? And so, like, I'm sad that people found out about the block. That's how it goes. But like, it was a better existence when it was just like, hey, we don't see eye to eye on this, so let's just go ahead and call it a clean break. It's not a weakness. People think fighting every fight is a strength. Believe me, having come from speech and debate, I understand the want to put your dog in every fight. But speech and debate is performative, right? You do it for everybody else. To be like, hey, everybody else, come watch this. I have my stance, he has his stance, and this is what we're talking about. But when you're trying to change somebody's mind on something, that shouldn't be performative. So if I'm trying to say, like, hey, I think that you should let's just use an example. I don't think you should be disparaging towards trans people. Or I think you should, even if you don't feel you're being disparaging, here's some language that you could use that makes trans individuals feel more welcome and accepted, right? Like here's some, if that, and then when they're like, I don't like it, if that's not my goal, let's talk about the issues that really matter. Be like, you know what? If I'm not reaching you, I hope somebody else does on this, because I still feel that it's important. I've said what I'm going to say. You're rejecting what I'm going to say. Let's just go our separate ways on it. I think that is a peaceful solution. I talked about this on Daniel 3. I was on Daniel 3 this last week here. Great show. Jacob Daniel Winograd, he's part of our little project here. Love what he has to say from a right libertarian perspective. Has some good ideas. Obviously, I don't agree with him a good chunk of the time, but we had a good conversation about people whose minds changed. I had no idea. Like, I still dislike, guys. I grain of salt here. I still very much dislike the stuff that you dislike about Stefan Molyneux. But on one individual example, he came around on Christianity, and that's cool. I thought there was no way that would have ever happened. I don't know who reached him. I don't know how they reached him, but they did a better job reaching him on that matter than me. Now, if the same person could please talk to him about race, science, and borders, we'd really be cooking. That would be wonderful. But I'm glad that somebody was able to reach him. But it's not a weakness if you're just not the right person. So if you say like, hey, sorry, I wasn't the right person, that's okay. Anyhow, that's peace of my mind. You all have probably, I'm sure all of us have been in a conversation where it's just best for us to leave. If you want to share some of your experiences. I
mean, obviously, we're libertarians that have social media. Like, that's literally 80% of our entire lives. But also, like, I'm trying to figure out who doesn't like or get along with Hodey. It makes no sense to me. I can't rationalize that in my brain.
Same.
It's ridiculous. And the thing the one thing I love about this is the people that are complaining that you're blocking them, that you've blocked them just so you don't have to see their posts, are the same ones that when somebody says something about them, they go, oh, you just misunderstood. Oh, you're just misunderstanding. No, we're not. In fact, we're pretty spot on usually on, especially when you use something like rootless cosmopolitan.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So.
Oh dear God.
Yep. So the funny thing is this: if Hodey wants to block you, and people obviously know who was blocked, that's his choice, and it's okay, because if you're going to be gonna run for a really important position. If some dude wearing headphones right now, sipping on a whatever, and he blocks you, bothers you that much, probably you're not presidential material. That's all I'll say.
Yeah.
I don't know who this is. I've been like super busy and haven't paid a lot of attention to it.
That's good.
Okay, I'm sure I will find out.
I'm sure I'm gonna get that. Well, they'll probably won't get anything.
And just I don't want to dance around it, and people might think I'm like, oh, I don't want to invoke the name because I'm scared. Like, it's not that. I just here's the thing.
I understand what you're saying.
It's Dave Smith. I blocked Dave Smith. I don't get along with him. Here's the thing. I don't want. The reason I'm trying to avoid mentioning his name is because I don't want this to turn into a big fight between me and him. I just don't get along with him. I just don't. Yeah. It's not productive. Usually, here's the thing, is people will come to my honor and then sometimes make the damage even worse. And it's not because it's they make my position look bad. It just makes the rift bigger. My goal isn't to push him away. My hope is that someone can reach him. But because I can't reach him, I don't need to fight him, push him away, do whatever. I just need to cut him off and just be nope. We're not, you and I are building two different bridges here. Yep. And there's no reason for us to work together right now. And that's pretty much it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And Hodey, I mean, I'm going to just say this again. I block some people as well, or at least mute them or whatever. Yeah. If they really want to have communication, they can reach out. That it's that simple. And if somebody blocks me, I don't look and I don't care. So it's
I just do not care. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like
some people
this is
seriously.
Yeah, it gets back to almost a middle school mentality. Well, what do you mean you don't like me? So hey, my name can be Mud in there as well. I'll be right there holding Hodey up. Whoa, wait a minute here. Dennis and I agreed twice in the same day. Everybody go up and buy lotto tickets tonight, please.
Yeah.
Ooh, that reminds
Take it
me,
from
I
the
do
state.
have a lottery ticket I gotta check.
Hey.
I'm sitting here just wondering. It's like, there's probably a lot of people who don't like what I say, and they go, "Oh, I'm just not going to listen to them." Bye. So, Hodey, just keep doing what you're doing, dude. You have so many people that have your back for a good reason.
Well, I appreciate that. Like I said, I don't want this to become tribalized or factionalized. There were a lot of people
Understood.
asking. Poor Jacob gets stuck in the middle of these things.
I
Don't make Jacob.
hang on. I'm going to say this. This is going out in public. I applaud Jacob for his stand today, or I mean this week, with the rootless cosmopolitan piece and stuff like that. And I hope I'm not calling him out. He did publicly call it out. But he is a great, trying to be a bridge builder, but sometimes you have to understand someone's going to keep trying to blow up that bridge. And I had to learn that myself a long time ago. So
Yeah, that is very well said. Desiree, why don't we move to your piece of your mind here? You actually, I know what you're going to talk about. You have an interesting segment also out of Texas here. So why don't you give us the deets on that?
Yeah. Thank you. So to be, where did Lou go? We lost her again.
she's probably driving through South Chicago right now. So cell service is going to be garbage.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Okay. I want to say, like, make no mistake about this. There is a war on women in Texas, and it's not just about Senate Bill 8. We also have the less publicized Senate Bill 315, which was Governor Abbott signed it on May 24th, and then it went into effect by June 1st. All of a sudden, anyone who was employed by a sexually oriented business lost their jobs if they were between the ages of 18 and 20. And it doesn't matter what your position was, whether you were an entertainer, whether you were a cocktail waitress, a bartender, bar back, a valet, anything, any position that you held, you suddenly didn't have a job. And a lot of the organizations that that deal with fighting the state with their ridiculous overreach with sexually oriented businesses were completely taken by surprise. We did not know. By we, I'm not part of those organizations, but just as a voter in Texas, as somebody who pays attention to politics, I didn't see that one coming either. I mean, I guess I'm just not paying enough attention. That shocked me during the worst time of this generation that people can become unemployed. Now they're unemployed. And I used to be a stripper from the ages of 19 to 22. So had I been that age and in that job in 2021, I would have been suddenly unemployed with a small child, putting myself through college. That was a really convenient job for me to have. There was about half of that time I was roommates with my stepsister, who had a daughter not that much younger than my son. And we had just a great setup. She worked days, I worked nights. We were both taking full loads at school. So we did them on opposing days, and we would watch each other's kids. And it was great. It worked. And unfortunately, whoever was depending on that job, especially during a pandemic where it was already made difficult. I do remember at the beginning, a lot of the legal brothels had shut down, which they had to. I get that. Just to ensure the safety of their employees and of the customers. But yet this has nothing to do with the pandemic. And to me, I'm just mind blown because, and I'm about to ramble a little bit, but as Hodey's very well aware, I am a proponent of Wyatt's comment made me chuckle too. I'm a proponent of psychedelics, and because of that, with my experiences with psilocybin in particular, and the research and stuff that has come along the way, I love Terrence McKenna so much. And I remember reading something that he had said one time where he thought that the Beat generation was the culture shift that we really needed to see happen, getting rid of the Puritan bullshit and, people just passionately and vehemently just being themselves and living the life that they wanted and experiencing pure joy. And, and I remember thinking, I wonder if that's, I wonder if he's right. I wonder. And, I don't know. I kind of kept looking at things from that perspective, but now here we are where, Lou had mentioned earlier that she had heard about a consequence of SB8 being just with people being overly dramatic or whatever, which, I mean, it's pretty bad anyway, but that women would be dragged to prison if they were dragged to jail if they had an abortion. It is a prison though. I mean, it is. I'm a 43-year-old woman who owns a home, decent income, married, everything right about my life. And I was relieved to get my period, and it's not something I really thought about that much before, but there is, make no mistake about it. And I'm hoping that maybe this is kind of the exhausted death grip or death gasp of the state, that they are trying to maintain control as they spin out. That's what I'm hoping, but it is scary. And there are lives that are being affected. There are people that are being harmed. There are people that lost their jobs. There are women that are being put in harm's way at this moment. It's a really dystopian and extremely misogynistic world to live in right now. And I'm not really sure how to navigate it. I never thought this would happen. And I feel like I failed, in so many ways, that I just didn't take it very seriously and just didn't pay enough attention. And so to my fellow sisters out there, I am sorry that I let you down. I'm with you now. I'm sorry. I don't even know what to say. It's just really shocking. And I think, a lot of us are still trying to wrap our heads around all of this. It's completely unfathomable to me. And, I'd mentioned that conversation earlier, that where I had texted Curry and, he's like, I saw this coming. And I'm like, how could I be so dumb? How could I?
Well, hey, I mean, Desarae, number one, you couldn't have stopped it.
No, but yeah.
But so number two, we all hold positions in our youth and as we grow older that change. Sometimes for the better, sometimes for the worse. I just want, first of all, everyone to get off my lawn. Second of all, I was
mine.
Yeah. But I mean, we all have positions that we change on as we grow older, or we go through experience. And I've had this discussion actually today about end of life discussions and care and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And some of those things that are still taboo that people still just freak out about. And oh my God, no, they can never go into a home. You take care of them. See ya. And that to me is just the most selfish thing someone can do. And I understand we all say, oh no, the one thing I love is, the Europeans really know how to care for them. It's kind of the same thing over there. It's just a little bit different. But it's one of those things that just, we all grow up. And if you're still holding, there still should be some positions you should still hold if you're in your 20s and thought, yeah, this is right, maybe economics and things like that. But as you get more world experience, you start going, I understand the other side, and that helps people understand that they can maybe become better human beings, hopefully. But
yeah, absolutely. And actually, to bring it kind of full circle to what y'all were talking about earlier, that's why I tend to be a lot more patient with newer baby libertarians. I was there. I had some shitty stances, and we get stuck, in the Libertarian Party, we get really stuck on philosophy and being right. And, but it's not for everyone, it's not just like, I have to be right. It's a matter of like, we've been programmed so much and we're smashing the glass of our programming, but it's a lot of layers. And so to us, it's really important. It's part of the process of like growing as a human and growing in our political beliefs. And, I don't like a lot of the stances that a lot of people in our party have, but I also have a lot of patience for at least some of them, the ones that I think are decent people that just haven't learned a different perspective yet. Like I do believe that a lot of the times people, they would never understand dog whistles because they're not for them. So to them, it goes over their head. And so, if you're calling them racist or bigoted in some way, and they're like, well, what, how? They legitimately don't get it. The ones that do, though, they're a problem. But, and I have this conversation with my friends all the time. Like, like some of us have the patience and some of us don't. But we're all just growing and learning and changing, and why not try our best to do it together? But hey, if not, you don't have to be in someone's life. You don't have to.
Yeah, kind of a good blend between what I was talking about and now what you're talking about here. The anti-stripper bill, I don't. Sorry for anybody who likes young gals. Between the ages of 18 and 21 or 20 or whatever it is in Texas, you're not allowed to be a stripper.
You have to be 21.
And it's just, you got to be 21, right? Like, I don't know. For me, this is whole like, when are you an adult? Like, you just at some point the state's got to let their hooks go on you. Like, and then there's goofy stuff like in some states, like you still can't like rent a car until you're like 30. Like, it's just okay, smoke when you're 18, but drink.
Not anymore.
No, 21.
You have to be
21.
Is that national?
Yep.
That's federal.
National.
No
21.
way. How did I miss this?
That was. You know who did that? The most libertarian president ever, Donald J.
Oh
Trump.
God, that just hurt to hear you say that.
So libertarian.
I'll be right back.
This is sarcasm for anybody wondering here. Like it's just at some point you just got to let go. This is another good example. This whole law is just another good example of like you give the state a little bit and they're just going to run with it. Like, if they feel like they can. This is what libertarians talk about with the lockdowns too. Like, if they can shut down your business, what can't they do? Right. So if all of a sudden I can say, oh, I have control of your body for abortions. Hey, I probably can have control of your body for where you work too. And it's just, this is so classic statism. Like, it's so classic. This is what government overreach does. You give them a little bit and they're just like, oh, yum, I'm going to take the whole thing. Right. There's no stopping these people. You gotta cut them off cold turkey. Otherwise they're just going to keep going. But yeah, I would imagine, libertarians are going to be by far and away the pro-life one I can see, because you can at least argue that maybe another human life is involved, but stripping, come on, man, like, let them be. Like, just at some point, you just got to let it go. You're not some big Christian superstar because you made strippers be 21 before they took their top off in front of you.
Maybe the reason was that they were deeply worried about some of the sponsors of the bill partaking of many 18, 19, and 20-year-olds. Anyhow.
That's a whole there's a whole can of worms. You're not that far off, actually. That's probably like a whole other, hours long conversation. So.
We might get Lou back. Lou dropped she's driving, so it's she's in and out. But let's at least get Brian. Let's get a piece of your mind here, and then if Lou shows up, we'll do that too. But yeah, give us what you got.
This weekend was the 20th anniversary of 9/11. I think everybody knows where they were. If you were above the age of 25, when that occurred. That being said, this weekend on the big show, that it was talking about all of the terrible decisions that were made because of 9/11. The good news is, for those of you that missed out on that, you're getting that now with COVID, because all of these same politically driven, stupid decisions are still being made now and are going to be made for your healthcare. I've said kind of through most of this, the Department of Homeland Security, we are going to see something very similar, like the Department of Communicable Diseases or something like that, come out of this pandemic. The CDC will be elevated to either cabinet status or something along those lines. The reason being is that there is no reason to let a good crisis go to waste, and we have seen this time and time again. It's disturbing. Governments doing this again, and I think the vast majority of people are kind of aware that the government's botched this up, and it isn't just the U.S. government; it's everywhere has botched it up. So once again, I'll say it's a great time to be a libertarian, libertarian, because we all know the government's going to screw things up, and us being there on the front lines can at least help maybe point out why we shouldn't do these things. Last point I'll make was I had a great conversation with my mom this weekend, and one of the things was talking about 9/11. And the first thought is usually one that you probably shouldn't do. And it gets back to the whole scene in Spaceballs where all three of them sit there and go, do something, do something, do something. If you're thinking do something, just do something, it's probably going to be the wrong decision. And guess who's leading it? It's going to be a politician. So we're right now in the do something part of COVID. So get ready for the fun. It's coming.
It's funny. The government has the power to. I'm gonna get maybe I'll get in trouble with libertarians for saying this. They do have the power to fix things. It's not a matter of power. It's just a matter of how it works, right? Like it's like the tool is big enough. Like as far as like a hammer hitting a nail, that hammer is plenty big, and there are a lot of nails that need hammering. But they always manage to hit more thumbs than nails, and it's just at some point it's predictable. Go ahead.
I gotta chime in though and say I'm pretty disappointed with a lot of individuals' response to COVID, and I think a lot of that probably has to do with distrust of the government or just like the frenzy that Donald Trump worked certain people into or whatever. But I feel like we could have done and been better through all this, and could have been a lot less selfish. And so, unfortunately, we kind of. I don't know. We fucking asked for it. We could have just solved it on our own, and we didn't. We decided to be petulant children. That's my perspective, and I'm sure I'm pissing people off right now, but I don't care. It's just how I observe it. We could have just been considerate of other people. We just could have, but we weren't.
Yeah, I mean, we were. Yeah, as far as being bad about it, I mean, America did pretty poorly. Well, I mean, let's face it. The world did pretty poorly. Right, like so. This isn't.
We did probably the worst, but yeah.
I mean, we did not well. I mean, percentages other countries have caught up, but I mean, we certainly let it go. The part of the issue is it's like, hey, what happened to the nap? Don't hurt people, don't take their stuff. Since when is getting other people sick not hurting people? Like it's just, I mean, and there's a point to be said, like, it was an accident, or I took necessary precautions or whatever, but like. Yeah, as far as just being like, I'm doing this because I can do it, like we definitely got there by being like, hey, we're being stupid because we're allowed to be stupid. And that's a good way for making people say the government now has to step in to take care of it. And it's like, no, because the government does a really terrible job. Like,
well, then they do, but so do we. But
I mean, yeah. Well, so like they hurt a lot of people, completely destroyed my business line of work. I mean, it's as far as like who's more to blame, we can play that game. But I mean, yeah, you do need to take care of your own stuff. Unfortunately, when you have something like a pandemic, it demands some level of coordination. That's just all there is to it. And so we do have to be able to say like, hey, businesses, you have to be able to run yourselves and make good decisions. People, when you have families, you need to be able to say like, hey, I'm going to make these decisions, but I know these people who are immunocompromised, and I need to let them know that I'm making these decisions. There's a level of adult communication that you can have about this kind of thing. But we just became so tribal about it. Like there was just no. It's weird because I felt like through the entire thing, I've rarely commented on it because I was so middle ground by just being like, and again, I'm a centrist libertarian, so what else would you expect of me? But but by just saying like, hey, maybe don't get maybe take this seriously, but also maybe don't allow for authoritarian overreach. And when some and we get so mad because one side was all about my rights and the other side was all about my government, and I'm just here in the middle just being like, man, can't we, how about responsibly using our rights? And then everybody's just like, boo, get out of here. No.
I'm with you on that.
You piss off both sides by saying it, and it's difficult because I think it's one of those that I just wanted to be like, this shouldn't be a political issue. I think we're just so used to talking politics. Everything comes through the scope of the government. So it's like whenever there's a problem in the world, our brain just automatically is like, what's the government going to do about it?
Yeah, but Trump made it political too, though.
Oh, sure. Well, I mean, it's exceeded him even, but yeah.
Yeah, he took it to a new level. It was always going this way. The big problem the big problem that I have right now with politics and politicians right now is they're speaking to their lowest common denominator. And the idea of that is they're speaking to their 5-10% base. Of the ones that are like, oh my God, anything he says, is gold, or anything she does is perfect. And those are the most fervent ones. And the rest of us are smart enough to go, there's a little nuance in here and there. I know I'm using the N word again. I'm sorry. But they keep speaking to that level. And we're a lot smarter than, maybe that was needed, 50, 70, 100 years ago. We have a lot of college educated people now. They know what the definition of nuance is. So maybe stop speaking at that level. If you need to speak at that level, actually a great example of that is if you look at George W. Bush before he took office, before he was elected president, before 9/11, before all that stuff, you watched how his timbre and his speed of his pitch changed. The second he was elected, he went from a kind of a little bit of a Southern kind of quick talk type of thing to my fellow Americans, and he spoke in like a very kind of regular timbre and beat to it that was way slower because he realized now he has to speak to far more people. But again, they keep dropping it down and down and down. And of course, the ones that they're speaking to are the ones they can con the easiest. So just like 9/11, here we go again on COVID.
To let you know how far I've come, I worked on the George W. Bush campaign, and I
had a bumper sticker.
Yeah, we actually discussed the fake accent, with the RNC was like, should we go more folksy, less folksy, what other people were trying to reach, that was actually like a legitimate discussed thing.
It should be,
Yeah. I mean, just anybody wondering, is politics fake? This is how fake it is. We talk about
it is.
It
is.
I mean, I'm running for office, and I told everybody that joined my campaign team when I first started, and I keep reiterating it, I'm not changing a thing about myself. I'm not going to, I could probably learn to be a better public speaker and so on. That's a matter of gaining confidence and doing better in front of a crowd and engaging.
I've never been a better public speaker, and I have a podcast. So, who cares?
Yeah. Hodey, you're great.
But I'm still going to wear my hippie dresses and drink and smoke and drop F-bombs. And, I'm not a politician. I'm running for office, but it's more of it's a culture shift kind of thing. But I'm taking it really seriously. Just because I'm not putting on a pantsuit and, doing that dumb thing that I hate that they do and all that. That's all fake. And people are tired of the dog and pony show, especially young people. And those are the people I'm trying to reach with my campaign,
I think you show up with purple hair and a Hillary Clinton pantsuit just to confuse them.
Isn't it odd that, dressing the part is somehow taking it seriously? Playing make-believe is taking it seriously. What?
It's ridiculous.
When between the ages of 2 and 50 did that happen? That we're supposed to dress?
It's middle management.
And with libertarians, we often fail at that. There are some of our candidates that run for office and they can pull off the whole suit thing or whatever. They can they own it and they rock it, and that's
who they are. Yeah, and then no disparaging to that. Some people like me, we're vanilla. That's who we are at our core. Yeah, I get what you're saying.
And then there are some libertarian candidates who go on stage and pull off all their clothes. But anyhow,
that's-
continue.
But I love that
We
person.
can pull that off, that's for sure.
And I used to be a libertarian that took off my clothes for work. Wait, I am a libertarian, but I used to take my clothes off for work.
I know what you mean.
Another drawing hit. I love James, and I think that he made an incredible statement. And I know there are a lot of people that are starting to kind of get it now, like what he was doing and what his intent was. And I know that there are people that will forever be pissed off at him. And I understand all perspectives on that, but I love him. He's my brother.
Yeah.
That's perfectly fine. I just think it's one of those things that time and place, but
James
talk about that
another one
My
of those.
political statements should be radical to me, but that's me. That's me. Not everybody goes for that.
I'm a sales guy, so I mean, I kind of think of the customer in the end.
Yeah.
I
James
can
is one of
respect
those
that.
guys, like, he and I don't get along, and so, like, I think we're just happily separated, and that's fine. Like, I'm glad he reaches who he reaches. I hope someday he'll be happy that I reach who I reach to. But yeah, it's just one of those, like, there's no reason for us to fight about it. He's his own man. He's got his style, and I'm happy he reaches.
Well, you're both wonderful people. So.
Yeah.
You're both
And you know what?
me.
I'm not asking you to choose sides, but
Yeah, of course not. He wouldn't either.
Yeah, I'm kidding. All right. Well, you know what? Let's go ahead and close here. And Desiree, why don't you go ahead? You got a platform here. Take as long as you'd like. Tell us what you've got going on. Everybody stuck around to the end. This is Desarae Lindsey, everybody running for Texas State Senate. Give them your deets. Tell them where to find you, how to donate, what you're all about. Hit it.
Thank you. And yeah, donations would be awesome. Those have slowed down recently, but the campaign is ramping up. So things are really starting to the election is November 2022. So yeah, we did start early. But there's a reason for that. I mean, the incumbent had announced like June. So, for me, I don't feel like it's too early. I also am a strong believer that libertarians should run campaigns longer, or any third party should run campaigns longer, just due to the fact that we have such an uphill battle. Fortunately, in Texas, we do have ballot access, so we don't have to do that. We do have to pay a stupid filing fee now, which is the same as the duopoly has to pay, even though we don't have conventions. We nominate, or we don't have primaries. We nominate by convention. But anyway, I am running for Texas Senate District 3. Assuming that doesn't change, they are holding a special session for redistricting, and there's like a suit now saying it's unconstitutional or against the Texas Constitution to hold a special session for redistricting. But we're in crazy, weird COVID times, and that's the reason it took the census data to get. It took that long for them to get it, and so on. I am running a campaign that is based on peace and love in a very big red rural district. I just want people to have a different option. I especially want to reach out to younger people. Huge, massive, incredible shout out to Wyatt, who was in the chat earlier. Wyatt Breckenhoff. I hope I'm saying his name right. He just started the Nacogdoches Libertarian Party, which is in the district I'm running in, and he is a student at Stephen F. Austin University. He's trying to get the Libertarian Club started at his school as well, trying to get students involved in third parties. He's come to several of our campaign meetings and is trying to coordinate with us. And he's just been an amazing resource and just an amazing person to get to know. We all really are impressed with him. And he's actually throwing their very first event on Friday, September 24th. 24th in Nacogdoches at a distillery. So that'll be fun. There's going to be live music. There's going to be food trucks. There's going to be booze, and it's going to be awesome. And we're going out there to go hang out with him, and we're excited about that. We're having an event here actually at my home next weekend. We had actually planned a big event with musicians from all over the country. Vermin Supreme was, of course, going to come out. Goat versus Fish was coming. We had Aaron Goldberg, who is the producer for Duncan Trussell's podcast. Aaron Goldberg is an incredible musician. We're, of course, going to have local bands, vendors, all sorts of things. And unfortunately, we got a bit nervous with the Delta variant traveling through Texas. So we decided that having something indoors was probably irresponsible, and reached out to the venue, and they said, we're welcome back anytime. They were actually pretty excited about having a political event there, which I thought was cool. I usually expect for people to be like, nah, I don't really, but they were cool. Our local gay bar is also extremely welcoming to us. So we'll be doing a kind of a flagship event at our local gay bar, and then hoping to kind of ship those, have like a proof of concept and go out to gay bars all throughout the district.
You are busy.
We have cool, exciting, fun things going on. Sorry, what?
You are busy.
We are. We're really trying to have maximum impact. JC Cook, who's one of my dearest friends, he's been helping the graphic design, and he and Tyler are going to be doing some videos for us. And so it'll be this will be like a legitimate actual campaign. I've been networking with a ton of activist groups from outside the party. There are people that are not libertarians that are excited that I'm running. I think that's really way cool. I can't wait to see where this goes. And I know I'm rambling a bunch, but my website is peaceandlovetexas.com, all spelled out, to donate, which would be awesome and appreciated. And I would love you forever. peaceandlovetexas.com/donate. And then I'm at Peace and Love TX on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and Twitch. I will start doing the Twitch thing lately because Twitch is really cool. But yeah, that's my ramble. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, Desarae Lindsey, thank you so much for joining us. I
Thanks
appreciate
for having
you having
me.
us out. Brian, as always, thank you. You're awesome.
Thanks, bud.
Yeah, Lou, wherever you are, thank you for the time.
We love you.
Please drive home safely. Please join us next week, barring some crazy, wild current event. We will be talking about the vaccine mandate. Now that we've got we're hoping to actually get some text of it. Right now, it's just like, here's what's gonna happen, and I have a lot of press releases. But one way or another, that's what we're going to be talking about next week. So please join us as we talk about that. Sorry, Brian.
No, it's going to be just as delicious as this week.
It's going to be. Yeah, we got back-to-back good ones lined up for you. Again, thank you to everybody who participated. Even people like Deanna, who said I was spewing misinformation. I'm glad we got on the same page.
No, Diana.
I really am.
She's a nurse. I mean, she knows what she's talking about.
Sure.
Hatred spewing Hodey. There we go. There's the new nickname.
Hater Hodey is a fun hashtag, and that's not at all well earned on my part.
Oh,
but thank you.
I didn't even think of it as a hashtag. Thanks, Hodey.
Yeah. Oh no! But I really do appreciate it, everybody, for joining in. You keep it going. The views are through the roof, and I could not be more thrilled. Don't tell Chris, but we are going to take over the main show very soon. That's a total exaggeration. I'm kidding. I don't even know what his views are. I just think for me, I see 3-digit numbers and I get excited, and then I'm going to get 4-digit numbers pretty soon here, and that's very thrilling. But thank you for joining us, sharing us around, listening in. I look forward to talking to you all next week. Love you. Be safe, and we'll catch you then.